Upon rewatch of the San Francisco 49ers against the Minnesota Vikings, what went wrong, what went right, and now the 49ers without another offensive star, Deebo Samuel. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there, and we appreciate all the new listeners as well. Welcome. If you are new to Locked On 49ers, make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast and get that content every single day. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, the news of the day, Croc, on Monday is now that Deebo Samuel is out. And it looks like he's going to miss a couple of weeks with a calf strain. So calf's doing a number on the San Francisco 49ers offense right now. Not headed for IR, though, but according to Kyle Shanahan, a couple of weeks. And Deebo got hurt late in the game. You could tell he was a little bit banged up during the game. He left the game. He came back and he was on the field and was involved in the final drive of the game. So Deebo hurt late, calf injury. He's going to be out now a couple of weeks. So no Chris McCaffrey, no Deebo Samuel. 49ers 1-1, and they will be without those guys for at least a couple more weeks now. And Deebo was a big part of the offense, right? I think, Jordan Mason's the big story offensively. He's been over 100 yards rushing in both of these games, but Deebo Samuel's been the 49ers leading wide receiver.
I was thinking about it, and I was just like, man, like how we were all worried about Brandon Aiyuk coming off of an injury, and you have to worry about the soft tissue injuries, and it's Deebo that ends up getting a strain early on. But he's done a lot. Not only is he a guy that they put out there at receiver, last game against the New York Jets, how many times did he carry the ball? Was it 8 times, running inside the tackles, outside the tackles? This game, they had him back there on kickoff return. And although I think he only had one opportunity to return a kick, but just him being out there, just more usage. So Deebo Samuel has kind of been the unsung hero, just a little bit of a guy who's kind of been all over the place for the 49ers, more of that, jack of all trades. And now you're potentially going to miss that for a guy who in this game came up big as a receiver. He had over 100 receiving yards, and I felt like some of the receptions that he made were huge. I mean, third downs in traffic, jumping up over across the middle. I thought Deebo Samuel, as just a receiver, played very well in that game, and missing him for 2 weeks hopefully is not as bad as it was last year when he was out a few weeks, and you could really tell a difference in the offense. This time, again, you pay Brandon Aiyuk a ton of money. He's going to have to step up. And like I've said before, I don't even think it's just so much Brandon Aiyuk. I think, Kyle Shanahan, draw up stuff specifically for your receiver. Use him as much as you need. Make him the focal point of the offense. See how he handles that. That's going to be a little tough for him just kind of coming back and still trying to get in game shape. But huge loss not having Deebo Samuel for a couple weeks.
It's interesting, too, because the Yak hasn't been there. The Yak bros are there, but the Yak hasn't been there. And the 49ers are a little bit down on yards per route run. They're down on Yak. Passing yards down throughout the league. How about this stat, actually? This one from relayed from Steve Palazzolo, formerly of Pro Football Focus. So here's passing touchdowns throughout the NFL through 2 weeks. In 2019, there was 105 passing touchdowns by every team in the first 2 weeks of the season. Then it went up to 110 for 2 years in a row, 2020 and 2021, even through the COVID weirdness of 2020. Then in 2022, back down to 105. So that's 105, 110, 110, 105 for 4 straight years, 2029 through 2022. Then last year, passing touchdowns dipped by 20 or 19, all the way down to 86 passing touchdowns last year through the first 2 weeks. And then this year, 20 more. Pending Monday Night Football, and I don't think there's going to be 20 or 40 passing touchdowns later tonight. We're recording this on Monday, late afternoon, early evening. The game's about to start here in a little bit. 66 passing touchdowns through 2 weeks compared to 110 just a couple of years ago, passing touchdowns through 2 weeks. So passing is way down throughout the NFL. So if it feels like the 49ers passing game's a little weird to start the year, they're not the only ones. And I think yardage wise, the 49ers are doing just fine with 230, 250 last week, and then over 300 passing yards this week. So the 49ers are actually even ahead of the game a little bit as far as the passing games go, even though it feels a little off, especially after week 2.
Do you think we can attribute that to just the lack of preseason reps? Really the league?
I thought you were going to say Jim Harbaugh. I thought you were going to blame Jim Harbaugh and his like jumbo 3 tight end sets.
Dude, I took the over on Justin Herbert's yards for the entire season, which was like 36. I'm like, 3,600 yards for Justin Herbert. Give me that, please. And he's throwing for like 75 yards a game.
Yeah. Hey, Jim Harbaugh's 2-0 though.
He is 2-0.
Jim Harbaugh's teams haven't been 2-0 in the NFL since 2012.
But so do you think that that's what the issue is? Just preseason has kind of become non-existent. And now teams are using the first quarter of the season to really kind of get into that groove offensively.
Is this the second or third year of the 3 preseason games?
It might be the second.
If it's the second, then that's a huge correlation with the 3 preseason games and then teams even utilizing those preseason games less in those years with fewer preseason games on top of it. Dropped all the way from 105 to 86. I think 2022, and I think there was 3 preseason games as well, right? This is the third season of 17 regular season games, or is it only the second?
All right, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
No, 2022.
Okay,
3 preseason games.
Okay, yeah, so that's when it started. That was the first year of it. It went down a little bit, only 5 touchdowns. But then
2021, 3. But I think that was that the COVID year.
2020 was the COVID year where there was like fake fans in the stands and all of that.
I think they had got rid of preseason altogether that year.
Yeah, that was a weird one. But
yeah, there was supposed to be 4. There was supposed to be 4 preseason games. They canceled every single one in 2020, and then when they came back in 21, that was when they went with 3. But I also think that and it looks like it if you look at stats, I think guys were still kind of playing. Even in like the 3rd preseason game, you look at the 49ers stats and it's like Trey Lance. You know, guys, their starters were getting reps. Jimmy Garoppolo, I see him on the stat sheet there. So your starters were playing. But I feel like now, even for the 49ers to roll out their starters in that 3rd preseason game for, a few series, that's something you're just not seeing around the league. So it's just kind of fallen off so much. I can go back to the Harbaugh days, in 2011, 12, 13, where guys played at least 1 or 2 series in the first couple games. In that 3rd preseason game, they played a ton. They play not just in the halftime, but even past halftime. And I remember that with even Kyle Shanahan, with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, there's a preseason game in my head right now where the 49ers are playing the Colts, and Jimmy Garoppolo was playing into the 3rd quarter of a preseason game. And you're just not seeing that, not only by the 49ers, but you're just not seeing that around the league. So when you look at a lot of these numbers that are down, or if you're watching the 49ers offense and you feel like, man, there's something missing, man, it's a little stagnant, or it's a little off, or, why is Brock Purdy holding on to the ball a little bit longer than he typically does? Well, I think a lot of these guys are using this time to kind of get in that groove. And I think 49er fans, faithful fans around the league for opposing teams, I think you just have to be a little bit more patient with offenses and specifically quarterbacks, because it has been down.
A lot of teams playing more 2 high shells as well, keeping things in front of them, as the 49ers did on a certain play that ended up being a 97-yard touchdown. I want to get into that play a little bit more. We got the end zone angle. What exactly happened? Fred Warner talks about what happened on that play. I want to officially start the bandwagon for Fred Warner being Defensive Player of the Year. We got PFF stats on Warner on the 49ers offensive line. And a couple of those holdouts for the 49ers that need to step up big now. No CMC, no Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams, especially on offense. When you're talking about playmakers, Brandon Aiyuk need to step up big time in week 3. We'll get into all of that next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure you're finding the quality professionals that are right for your role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just some job board. And you can find so many people on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, because those that aren't actively looking but might be open to the perfect role in a given month, 70% of those LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So to put it simply, if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have the time and resources to hire. So they're constantly finding new ways to make the process easier and even helping you write job descriptions. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. And when you're trying to buy tickets for an NFL game, a 49ers game, maybe a college football game, how about the next big concert you want to go see, or a comedy show? You can find all those tickets at Game Time. And now a new feature called Game Time Picks makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, so you can concentrate on only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And of course, you got the views from your seat, panoramic view on your phone. You know exactly what's going to look like over here, over there. And you toggle on the all-in pricing, no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. So with Deebo out, let's talk Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk, 1.1 yards per route run right now. It's about a third of where he was at last year. He played 85% of the snaps, I think was the number in week 2. But even the 85% of the snaps, there was times, I think I told the story last night right after the game, some of the folks I was watching the game with were like, is Brandon Aiyuk even playing right now? And it's like, yeah, 11's out there, but not making an impact at all really through 2 games. Is Brandon Aiyuk. He's made a couple of catches. Now with Deebo out, he's going to have to be one of the focal points, if not the focal point of the passing game or even the entire offense. And, Jordan Mason, you hope he runs for 100 yards every game. That would be awesome. But it's Kyle Shanahan's going to have to lean into Brandon Aiyuk, and Brandon Aiyuk's going to have to be in midseason form now after a couple of games to get ready.
We know Kyle Shanahan has that type of ability in his offense, kind of built in to be able to feature a receiver. We watched it in 2015 with Julio Jones, where he had over 200 targets. And clearly, when you go to 2016, there was a huge drop-off in targets for Julio Jones. I think he went from over 200 targets to around 130 targets. So 130 is still more than any receiver is getting for the 49ers right now over the tenure of Kyle Shanahan, but a 70 target difference from one year to the other. That shows Kyle doesn't want to have to force feed a certain guy. And that's been kind of the winning recipe for him. But when you have guys out, when you're missing Christian McCaffrey, a guy who not only demands carries, but he also demands targets as well in the passing game. When you're missing Deebo Samuel, like you said, guy that's leading the 49ers in receiving over the first couple of weeks, you're going to have to figure something out. You still have guys out. You still got George Kittle, still an all-pro. Was just an all-pro last year. You got Brandon Aiyuk, all-pro receiver. Was an all-pro last year. You also have a guy like Juwan Jennings. And I think this would be a great time to have Ricky Pearsall. He's still, recovering from his gunshot wound, but it sounds like everything is on track for him to be ready in a few weeks. But, man, let's put a little bit more on Aiyuk's plate. Let's feature him a little bit more. Let's figure out different ways to move him around and get the ball in his hands. He has a terrific skill set. He's probably still kind of working his way back in this game shape a little bit, missing all the training camp, not being able to be out there, push himself and use that period to ramp up. But there's so much meat being left on the bone. And in all actuality, I think this is what Brandon Aiyuk wants, not for his buddy to be hurt. He's actually, I think as we're recording right now, 4 p.m. Monday, starting a podcast. Deebo Samuel. And his first guest is, he has a podcast now. And his first guest is Brandon Aiyuk.
It's supposed to be must listen, so we'll find out.
Yeah, they are recording, I think, as we're recording right now. But of course, he wants his buddy out there, but he wants more. He wants to be featured more. And I think everybody wants that opportunity to prove and show, hey, this is what I could do. So I'm excited to see 49ers throwing the ball 10 times. And if they do, what does that look like? Because that's what we're seeing around the league. Even for a guy like St. Brown, didn't get a bunch of targets week 1. Week 2, you damn sure better believe they targeted him a ton. He had 11 receptions. I watched the 4th overall pick or 3rd overall pick, whatever he was, with Marvin Harrison Jr. First game, what do you have? 1 target? People are like, man, he's just running around doing cardio. This game, he has over 100 yards in like the first quarter. So I think Brandon Aiyuk, I'm not saying he's of that ilk, but we are talking about a guy who is getting paid like one of the best in the league. Let's utilize him that way.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. He got his $30 million a year. The 49ers wanted to pay him that. So that should command the target share right there. And it's time. Like this week, the 49ers need it. You can't drop this game in week number 3 and go under 500 if you're the 49ers. So big Aiyuk week here in week number 3. You've had an opportunity to get a couple of games under your belt, and it's really time to step up. And if we're going to stay on the step up category, but I think it's clearly affected Trent Williams. And, he needed he played really well in week 1, needed the IV in week 4. I think week 2, just watching him out there, he wasn't moving around quite as good. I think it was clearly like, okay, held out all off season. You show up, you play your first game, and now you got a quick turnaround. It was a short week for the 49ers to go Monday to Sunday on the road, and he didn't quite look like himself out there. Going to the PFF numbers here. Only one player on the 49ers offensive line allowed more pressures than Trent Williams did, and it was Colton McKivitz. So both of your tackles allowed 10 combined pressures on 45 dropbacks, which is not good at all. Colton McKivitz, 6 pressures allowed. Trent Williams, 4 pressures is allowed. That's not including the sacks and the QB hits that were allowed by Trent Williams. Dominic Puni allowed 3 pressures. Banks and Brendel each allowed 2 pressures. So, that's what 17 pressures for your starting offensive line. Those aren't great numbers there. So clearly the 49ers were off, and that offensive line was definitely part of it. And especially when you look at Trent Williams, you don't really see him get beat like he did in that game. And so this is definitely a week number 3, that hopefully after 2 games now, Trent Williams and Brandon Aiyuk can be those players that you need them to be and step up and be prime star players that they got the money to be after holding out this offseason.
Yeah, and even more so, at least for me, than the usage is these guys staying healthy. Like, I don't think they're in a clear to not end up having one of those kind of soft tissue injuries, and it's something that can be nagging for a majority of the year. Again, you go back a year ago, what did we see from Nick Bosa? Played very well, but wasn't quite himself throughout the 2023 season. So you want these guys to kind of, hey, let's ramp up. Let's end up getting kind of to 100% in the conditioning department so you can be more of yourself, especially if early in the season like this for Brandon Aiyuk, you're going to be asked to really do a whole lot more.
I'm looking at I just wanted to get the QB hits and sack numbers exactly correct here for Trent Williams. Here it is. Yeah. So 4 pressures, 2 hurries, 1 quarterback hit, and a sack on 45 pass block attempts. That was that was Trent Williams' line. So not a great line for Trent Williams. And you could see it on the field. You could look at it, went back and watched. And it was like, okay, because I there was a few plays. I was like, man, Trent got beat. Did he really get beat? And went back and watched. And he wasn't moving around like his normal self. It didn't feel like. So I definitely think the holdout and then playing on a short week again affected him in week number 2. So you got to get those guys right. And you got to keep them healthy too, because all of a sudden you lean on these guys more. And now they get hurt. And now you're down 4 offensive players, right? So the 49ers got to be smart too, but they want to go out there and win this football game. So it's going to be a lot of Jordan Mason. I think it's going to be a lot of Brandon Aiyuk. It's got to be a lot of Brandon Aiyuk in this game. Of course, George Kittle, 3rd and Juwan will be featured as well. Maybe a little Jacob Cowing, unless do you think he's making a little trip in the doghouse after muffing a punt, Croc?
Well, the Kyle Shanahan has a tendency, or at least a reputation, of not caring about special teams. And I'm sure he does to a certain extent, but maybe Kyle sees that and is like, well, that has nothing to do with what he can do and give us as a receiver. So yeah, you dropped the punt or you muffed it. Maybe they replace him there, but yeah, that could open up definitely more opportunities for him as a pass catcher. I will say when the 49ers kind of started going to some of these other receivers, it was Ronnie Bell, I believe I saw on the field running around a little bit.
Interesting. Ronnie Bell might be the one that's the big.
I'd have to look at his snap total, but if I'm not mistaken, that's just me thinking on the fly right now. I remember seeing Ronnie Bell out there.
I don't recall seeing Cowing on the field. The only thing I remember from him, and I wasn't specifically watching for him, but the only thing I remember was the muff punt from Jacob Cowing on the day. And remember, early in camp, before Cowing got hurt, he actually muffed a punt in practice, and reporters were talking about how Kyle Shanahan was yelling at him after he muffed the punt. And then he had like a, whatever it was it a hamstring? What was Cowing dealing with? I think it was a hamstring, right? And then he missed like a couple of weeks of practice with a hamstring. And then he came back and, had a nice preseason game. It's like, oh yeah, we kind of forgot about the other stuff. If he's not going to have a jersey on Sunday if the 49ers don't trust him to catch a punt.
Maybe Kyle Shanahan does care about special teams.
Something. Well, he just wants it to be good enough so he doesn't have to care about it, right? That's why he spent a third round pick on a kicker. By the way, 50-yard field goals left and right. Every team in the league. It's like an extra point now. A 50-yard field goal. Have you noticed that? It's getting kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Two of them from Moody last week, right? Was it three? It was at least 2 50-yarders of his 6 field goals last week. We're seeing guys just line up like no problem, 50 plus around the NFL. It's the
that Cowboy kicker, Aubrey.
Yeah, Brandon Aubrey. Yeah.
Yeah. Man. I mean, he's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
he banged that through. I want to say week 1 from 66, which he had hits from 66 in the preseason.
Yeah,
but he banged one through from 66, but something happened. Was it delay a game or something? Yeah. So it didn't count.
And it was going to be 71. They were lining up to kick it again. And then they're like, and then they changed their minds. I wanted to see the 71 yard.
I don't think he had it from 71. He snuck that in from 66. I mean, which is crazy because for a majority of my lifetime, like it was Janikowski kicking 61, 62 yard field goals. Like that was kind of like, oh my goodness, a 61 yard field goal. That is amazing. So to see a guy banging it through from 66, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Whether it's preseason or quote unquote practice kick at the in a regular season, like that kicker's money though.
Even 50 yards back in the day, it was like, we're gonna go ahead and punt. So we're in the golden age of long field goals right now in the NFL. No touchdown passes, but we're getting tons of 50-yard field goals, Croc, just like the NFL wanted for their television product. All right, it's time. Let's start it. It starts now. Fred Warner for Defensive Player of the Year. More on the 49ers' best player through 2 weeks, and maybe the league's best player through 2 weeks next. The next segment of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. You've heard us talk so much about FanDuel, and there's a reason they're America's #1 sports book, always giving their users so many options and bonuses and a little something different to start this season. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. And all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time and bet on those San Francisco 49ers to win the Super Bowl. Bet on the 49ers to bounce back and win in week 3. Tons of prop bets, tons of, how about Fred Warner for Defensive Player of the Year? You can find that on FanDuel. Might be some smart money right now. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book. That is FanDuel.com. Fred Warner, PFF grade, the highest of any player in the NFL through 2 weeks, Croc. So the PFF grade matches what the eye test is when you watch Fred Warner on Sundays. The highest graded player in the NFL through 2 weeks, 95.8 grade, according to Pro Football Focus. So those fans that hate PFF, you might want to agree with PFF on that one, because that's exactly what I see on the field, Croc. He's all over the place. He's making interceptions. He's forcing fumbles. He's ranging in the run game. He's ranging in the pass game. And the 49ers put so much on his plate. And as I think it was Brent Jones, I heard on the radio today saying if the 49ers had 22 Fred Warner's on the team, they'd win every game by 50 because he's one of the best players in the NFL. And I totally agree. He's playing like a maniac out there. And I think we need to start the start the bandwagon, start the campaign for Fred Warner, Defensive Player of the Year, because he's playing like it through 2 weeks.
No, I hate that we're having to start this campaign after a loss, but the fact that that loss wasn't worse than what it was a direct attrition to Fred Warner and how he played. Like, how many times do you see? Yeah, how many times do you see a linebacker keep the game close? We see quarterbacks keep games close. You might see a receiver do some ridiculous stuff to keep some things close, but for a linebacker to have that big of an impact in the game, and we feel his impact even when he's not forcing a bunch of fumbles or picking off passes, but for him to force 2 fumbles, pick off a pass, and then we saw what he did in week 1 flying around. I was seeing what other people around the league were saying about him, and like Emmanuel Acho, talking head, former NFL player, he was a guy who was like, this guy's not human. And when you watch him and how he's moving around, flying around, he doesn't look human. And there are people now that they might look at as kind of like the standard of what you want your linebacker to look like. They ain't coming out looking like that, moving like that, and doing the things that he's doing also in the run game. One of my buddies, he's been losing weight, and he's like, man, I'm kind of at that linebacker weight. Man, what was Fred Warner's measurements? And he looked at Fred Warner's measurements coming out of college, and he's a legit 6'3", 235 pounds. Like, this is a long, rangy, athletic guy who really gives you everything. And I thought maybe, like, is he going to be able to be like a stack linebacker? Is he going to be able to fill gaps, shoot holes, disengage from blocks? That might be a little tough because he's a little kind of DB-ish a little bit with his strength. Hasn't been an issue at all. He is the standard at the linebacker position. Definitely starting to kind of make his way as Defensive Player of the Year for sure, or at least early on.
Yeah, I mean, and that was so amazing his rookie year. And he rolls out there because remember the 49ers had Reuben Foster, and he was the middle linebacker. And it's like, okay, Fred Warner, lighter outside backer, perfect fit. And he shows up rookie season, green dot, making the calls on his helmet. And it was like, okay, Fred Warner, middle linebacker. And that was the right call. I mean, the dude is cerebral. He is smart. He is tough. He plays like a maniac. He makes everybody else play better. You look at all the stats and everything that he does for himself, but what he does for everybody else, I think is absolutely huge too. So Fred Warner, Defensive Player of the Year through 2 weeks. And I have no doubt he's going to keep it going this year. Niners going to have to lean on him too.
I think the bigger question now is he peaking too early for Defensive Player of the Year, right? A lot of times you want that guy, man, down the stretch of the season.
No,
he's making plays, it's fresh in everybody's mind, but is he starting off too fast with this?
No, people forget. People want to give out the award too soon. You win that award by mid-season a lot of times. You only have to be MVP for the first 10 weeks of the year to get the award. People don't care about what happened at the end of the year. They're already ready to cast their vote. Some guys mail in their vote early too. It literally, at least back in the day, it used to be by mail. They'll mail in, hadn't even seen the last 2 weeks of games, and they mail in their MVP vote already.
That's a great point, because I think if they would have utilized the last quarter of the season to cast their vote for All-Pro when Talanoa Hufanga was up, not quite sure he gets it, but because he started that season so strong, for the first 3 quarters of the season, it's like, oh, 100%. This is an all-pro player. And I think that's how he got it. Teams or people mailed in that vote a little soon. And that's not to say that Hufanga wasn't deserving of it, but just kind of, is a counter argument to the point that I made. Like, man, is he starting too soon? Nah, Talanoa Hufanga did the same thing. Obviously, this is a more prestigious award that you're going for right here, being Defensive Player of the Year. But if anybody could do it, Fred Warner. I still kind of hurt. And remember when I felt like Navarro Bowman was robbed. What was that, 2013 season? Like, Bowman was special. They gave it to Luke Kuechly, and awesome player as well. But I thought it was hands down Navarro Bowman that year.
No, Navarro Bowman's a coach in the NFL. Maybe that's why touchdowns are down. Putting up those linebackers for Jim Harbaugh. Defense.
At least touchdowns are down against the Chargers, and he's done a good job coaching over there with Harbaugh.
To be scored, and I think it might be Pittsburgh against the Chargers next week, which is going to be like a 9-6 game. The 97-yarder Croc. So saw the end zone angle of that play, and really interesting what happened there. I think the biggest thing for me was it was the right call against the right call. Execution. We talked about the 49ers during the post-game pod where, communication, just kind of a little bit off in that game. This game, I don't know if it was so much communication, but The 49ers called the blitz, and the Vikings had a great offensive play call for what the 49ers were doing defensively. And they had max protect in. They only had 2 players running routes, a third if you count the running back coming out of the backfield who was looking to pass block first and then kind of snuck out at the end of the play. And I think the throw was already gone by the time he actually even was going to become a receiver. And so they had 2 tight ends. They had everybody in to block, only 2 guys out on routes. And then still you get a guy wide open, the best player, the guy that you have to have somebody over the top of. But the play call was so there would be somebody over the top. And so I understand why some fans want to blame Odom. Some fans want to blame Jair Brown. Some fans want to blame Nick Sorensen for the call. But in reality, there should have been a guy over the top. So can you blame Sorensen there? Or do you just give credit to a good throw from Sam Darnold? And by the way, Sam Darnold, he's in the end zone, right? He knows that they're dialing up a play that could be a shot play. And he's taking his drop into the end zone. You can see him like really worried about the pass rush early because he sees there's a blitz coming. He actually kind of looks like he has his head down and he's like maneuvering around to make sure he's clearing the pocket, is not going to get sacked. And then he sees it and he lets it go. And it was a beautiful throw, a perfect throw. 97 yards in total with Sam Darnold hitting Justin Jefferson on that play. It was the right call against the right call. And then bad execution by the 49ers on top of it. Fred Warner, being the guy he is, tried to take credit saying, look, I was blitzing on that play. I got to be able to get home. We got to be able to pressure the quarterback so they can't hit you with a big play over the top. But and the pass rush was slow to get there, but there was 7 blockers for 5 rushers.
Yeah, they definitely went max protect in. Essentially what they ran was dagger concept. With dagger concept, you're getting a seam or post, depending on how the safety is, by number 2. And number 1, you're getting a deep dig route. So what they did, especially versus single high, is make the safety have to choose. Do you want to help on this post/seam route, or do you want to help on the dig? And I think the dig declared before the post did. So the safety saw the dig, and that had him hesitate for a split second because, oh, do I need to drive this? And that's tough too. You have a dig being ran by a receiver versus a cornerback with outside shade, which was Travarius Ward. So the corner was going to be behind a step or two, like kind of no matter what, unless he truly just anticipated and kind of guessed a little bit or played with more anticipation. But he was going to need a little bit of help covering that. And Sam was just like, all right, I have max protection. That's all I'm reading. These 2 guys, what does the safety do? He take a step up, I'm throwing it deep. If he gets back, I'm throwing this dig. And I think he had them either way. Unfortunately for the 49ers, you would love to keep things in front of you. Jair Brown got caught just a little too long staring at that dig route. But I did hear the people, they were upset with, it's like, well, is it Sorensen thing? Like, shouldn't there be Deommodore Lenoir over there? And I mean, I guess you could do that and have
big thing. I hear is like you're not gonna cover Justin Jefferson with safeties. Why is there no corner on Justin Jefferson? Should be double covered. Should be a corner on him and a safety over the top. What do you say to that?
Well, I say a lot of what they did throughout this game, Jefferson, he only had 4 catches.
True.
Now the 4 catches was for over 100 and something yards, but the 49ers were trying to bracket him. Like, they were trying to double coverage. I mean, I watched one where they had him bracketed and try to pass him off, and he sat down in this like open area between the brackets and still made a catch. So they were throwing different looks at him, but at some point it's like, dude, you guys get paid too. Well, yes, we want to try to double him every single time, but man, we want to try to send a little blitz here. Can we get the ball out early? They're backed up. They're on the 2-yard line. The Vikings, like you said, they just called a really good play. And not just a good play, they had a terrific throw and read from a guy who a lot of people are like, oh, you lost to Sam Darnold. How dare you? And it's like, well, Sam Darnold made some elite plays, throw. He made some big-time plays, big-time throws, and big-time positions there. So even if you want to say that Sam Darnold isn't this great quarterback, I thought he was great when he needed to be in this game against the 49ers.
He was absolutely good. The Vikings were better than the 49ers on this day. I think there's multiple reasons why that was the case. The 49ers have an opportunity to get things fixed and go into week 3 and get back in the win column there. They're going to have to do it without Deebo Samuel, though. So it's time for the $30 million man, the second highest paid player on the entire team, Brandon Aiyuk, to step up in week number 3. Hopefully the 49ers can keep running the ball as well. More on the week 3 matchup. We're going to have a little Winky Wednesday. We're going to have a crossover as well as we get ready to continue the season here every day as we do. Shout out to all the everydayers. Thanks for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Check out the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Check out the new Locked On NFL, Locked On Fantasy. Your team is covered in other sports as well right here on the Locked On Podcast Network for your second listen. Croc and I back tomorrow. Locked On 49ers.